All right. Well, happy Friday Eve. I know this is not my regularly scheduled time frame. I actually adjusted this because it was my wife's birthday on Tuesday. And so I moved everything for her birthday. But today I'm looking forward to this conversation with Ed Hess. We have had this on the books for a while, and I am so looking forward to it. For those of you who may not know, Ed is the Professor Emeritus of Business Administration at the Darden School of Business. And you are also the author of more books and publications than I can count. And we're going to be talking about not just demystifying what's going on with technology right now and the AI boom, but really how to rewire ourselves, because it can feel extremely overwhelming. But if we don't rewire ourselves, right before we went live, we said, you kind of have to.
Yes.
And that the title of this conversation is Innovate or Evaporate. And that very much is the case. So Ed, thank you so much for making the time for me today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be with you and to be with the people that are here. And it's, and the work you're doing, let me applaud you. The work you're doing, I did my research and everything. You are doing good stuff, man. You're doing good stuff, helping people. All right. Understand what's going on, what to do with it, how to do with it. And so full speed ahead.
Well, you know what? There's no stopping me. So even if you said, Christopher, you just need to turn off that mic and delete your channel, I'd be like, well, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. But no, so I'm looking forward to this. So those who may not know you, which even I'm trying to remember, we got introduced through, I'm trying to remember where we got introduced. But anyway, I knew who you were before we even connected. But other people might not. So a little bit of background into Ed, and you've got a pretty impeccable background. But for those who don't know you, who is Ed?
Who is Ed? Well, that's a good question. And Ed's been trying to answer that for a long time too. Okay. So really, it's hard to define me. I've had 3 different careers in my life. All right. And I really have gotten to where I am, not because of me, because of other people saw something in me and gave me opportunities all through my life to explore. And I've always been an outlier. And, when I went to Wall Street as a senior partner and everything, I didn't know how to do an internal rate of return. And, and I told the chairman of the board this, who was the person who was hiring me, and he says, I know that, but I know you, and I know you know how to learn, and you'll have this knocked out by Friday afternoon. That was 2 days. And, and he was right. And so it's a little bit like, who am I? I tried to be, bring my best self to the table every day. As I've gone through my life, I've had some ups and downs, like all of us. But I'm very, I'm very realistic that, I, just like everybody we're going to be talking to, I've got to transform myself for what's happening now in the world, just like somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even in their teens. And so, Who am I? I love learning.
A lifelong learner. That's for sure.
I love learning. I love conversations with people. And I'm, and I have my whole, I built my sort of system as how to optimize being a good human being and helping people as best I can. And so that's the story. And it only happened because of people. I had people who completely transformed my life by what they did, starting in the 8th grade. All right. In the 8th grade. In the 8th grade, my life was transformed. Really, it was the most major transformation. And it's, the story's not long, but I don't want to take the time to share it. But
well, you can at least give us the Reader's Digest version, because starting in 8th grade is a pretty early start.
Well, we'll start from the beginning. I was I was born 2 pounds, 13 ounces, 6 weeks ahead of time, and stayed in an oxygen tent for 6 weeks at a time that I was called, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. The biggest hospital said that I was their first miracle baby. So I basically, started
Yeah, I'm a
out.
dad of 7, and that's not a normal birth weight.
No. And no, 2 pounds, 13 ounces. No, that's not. But that was how I started. And then my family, we were, we weren't wealthy or anything at all. And my folks moved out into rural Georgia. And in rural Georgia, they were outcast. I was an outcast, and I was a little person. I was the only child who wasn't on the male child who didn't get on the football team. Only one in the whole.
Okay.
And so I was just sort of out there.
Yeah.
Long story short, into the 7th grade, and I learned how to learn, and my mother saved up money, and every 2 months she saved up enough money to take me to a bookstore to find some books. And I started reading books, and reading books took me out into the world. And I wanted to be like Dr. Mayo, the Mayo brothers. I wanted to be like the baseball star. I said, there's a world out there. I got to get there.
There's a world bigger than the world I'm in right now, and whatever that is, I want to be there.
And that came about the end of 7th grade. Football is king in the South, as you probably
Yeah, that's a bit of an understatement.
And football coach in Carrollton, Georgia, where I was raised, it was either the top or the number 1 and 2 best football coaches in the state. Never met him, whatever. I just knew that he was God. All right. And he called me in June, and he said, I looked at he said, I'd like for you to, become an athletic trainer for me. I says, what's an athletic trainer do? He said, and I said, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. He says, I know that. I'll teach you how to do it. And he said, I want you to work with me. And every day when the school year, after school, obviously, practice and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the baseball team. He said, I've got one requirement. Every morning you have to be at my house at 7:30. And for the next 5 years, you will ride to school with me in my car, and I'll take you at home at night. Well, that changed my family's entire life, because
I would imagine
God, little g, placed his hand on us and said, leave these people alone. These are my people. I'm taking care of him. So what happened? I did all of that, and it came good. He said, why don't you write an article for the biggest high school football magazine in the country on how to be, tape ankles and stuff. And he says, I'll help you. I wrote that article, and it got published. And then he said, all right, why don't we take that publication to the University of Florida? I hear they need some people. So bottom line, I went to the University of Florida, met the head football coach, and I got a full scholarship to go to school and to start taping ankles. And I did that for a year, and then I became a data analyst. And I didn't know what a data analyst was, but I figured out how to do that. And so that's how my life has gone. I've always been put into situations I didn't know how to do.
Put into uncomfortable situations.
And
that were
figured it
unfamiliar.
out, but I wasn't scared.
out.
I wasn't scared. It was a challenge. It was an opportunity. But there are 25, I've had 25 angels in my life, 25 human beings who basically, just like, go to Wall Street. I don't know anything about business. Well, I know you'll learn it real quick. And I need you to do these things. Okay, let's try that out. Ooh, that works. That wasn't so bad. Those people not as smart as I thought.
You've had people that showed you the path forward that said, I see what you're capable of.
Yes.
I'm going to put you in this situation, but I'll be here to guide you through that.
Yes, that's right.
But you've been the one who's been willing to say, I understand that's uncomfortable and risky, but I'm willing to take that step.
Yeah. And after a while, what's so interesting is after a while, you feel like that if you're not doing that, you're basically going downhill.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm
Hey.
weird. I'm weird.
No,
Okay.
it's a kind of weird that I love, by the way, Ed, because I don't think I've ever fit in anywhere. So I love weird, because weird is great and it's awesome. And there are many things in your story that I can relate to in terms of, okay, I'm figuring it out. And you know what? And then to your point, though, once you start doing that, when you're not doing that,
Yeah.
you feel like you're dying. You
Yes.
literally feel like you're dying. You're like,
Yes.
what? I'm dying. I'm not
Right.
in that environment anymore.
That's right. And so we both are lucky, because in the way we have lived our life, which is unusual, is the way that most people got to learn their life in the, you know, AI age, the smart technology age. We are lucky that we basically fell into that. Now it's not going to be luck. It's not going to be chance. There's going to be no option. Human beings are going to have to rewire themselves so they can be successful in this, undescribable, unbelievable, environment that we're in from a technology viewpoint that's not going to slow down.
No. Well, and for those who watch and listen to this, our goal, as we talked about this, because I think one of the things that what you hit on that I love, that I want to put a pin in, is the fact that it is a different road to walk. It's definitely a different road to walk. But one of the things, and it's part of why I started this show, was I love when people who have had that walk use that experience to drive others to walk the same path. And instead of taking it on themselves and go, I'm just going to use this for my own personal gain, say, I want to use this to help other people figure that path out. And I know a lot of people, and for good reasons. The uncertainty that AI has brought into the world is huge. And at a time when it is more chaotic than it probably has been in pretty much anybody's lifetime who's walking right now. And so you mix those things together. I completely understand why people are feeling overwhelmed right now.
Yes, you're exactly right. I mean, it's going to take transformation. This is not something that is going to be a big hit and then sort of, peter out, smooth out.
Oh,
all right.
This isn't going to fizzle in a year or two.
This is not going to fizzle in 5 or 10. Okay. I mean, this is because it's going to impact geopolitics. I mean, we got a race between, basically 3 technology companies as to who's going to be the big winner. We got a race between,
it's an arms race right now. I mean, from a technology standpoint, it's an arms race.
Yeah. And we got a race between China and the United States as to who's going to be a winner, and all these races and everything. And there'll be new ones. All right. There'll be new entrants. And so if you think about it, human adaptation is mission critical, but the way we are wired, and the science is clear, all right, the way we're wired, we go out in the world, all right, and seek confirmation of what we believe. Okay. We don't process stuff that disagrees with us. All right. Affirmation of our ego. Okay. We got this story about how good we are or how whatever we are, but we got this story of who we are. Well, that story is going to change. If your job's going to change every 3 to 4 years completely, are you going to possibly lose your job and have to start a new job 2 or 3 times? Quite possibly. Wait a minute. The story of who I am today may not be the story of who I am 3 years from now, 4 years, 5 years from now, whatever it is. It may not be the story next week. All right. You don't know when it's going to hit. And so it's that we got a story that what's my new story? I got to create my new story. All right. Which is, a lot of it is, how do I basically become, highly adaptive learner. All right.
Well, so on that one, I'm really curious because you've written a lot about this and you've researched this extensively. Is this confirmation bias, this identity that we build into ourselves that becomes, if we're not careful, an existential threat to us, because we can actually get to a point where we've built our identity so strongly in whatever it is that we confirm, that anything that threatens it,
Yes.
we shove to the side,
Yes.
which, and there may be people listening to that who go, that's not true. That's not me. And it's like, that in and of itself is confirmation.
It is you.
It's confirmation that yes, it is.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And quite frankly, that's not abnormal in the world we live in. All right. If you go into the just take the business world for an example. I mean, you got very senior people who are very smart and also believe they're even smarter than they are. And so if you think about it, you go into team meetings, and there's people, basically it's competition. It's who's going to win. It's who's going to lose. Who's going to look bad. And
it's a zero-sum game. It's at least often treated that way. That
right.
In order for you to win, I have to lose, and vice versa.
And in the era we're going into, it's going to be mission critical that all of those ways of being are going to have to leave, because collective intelligence, the intelligence of the group, is far greater than any one person's intelligence. And I don't know whether you've read the research coming out of MIT and Carnegie Mellon over the years on collective intelligence, but it's fascinating research, and I share it, and there's going to be a lot of people listening that are going to find it shocking. All right. And that's every one of the male species. All right. And it's interesting. MIT started out and did 5 major research studies. So this is over some years. And they built collaborative teams. It's all about optimizing collective intelligence, optimizing team collaboration. All right.
Okay.
The design was, teams of, 5 men, no women, 4 men, 1 woman, 3 men. You got it. 2 women. You know how it goes. And they did various projects. And in all 5 of those studies, the best teams, the best collaboration teams, were made up of 5 women and no men. The second best teams were 4 women and 1 man. Third was 3. You can see where this goes. Well, Carnegie Mellon, which is another great school, said, this is all wrong. They're missing this. So they did their test. All right. They did 3 tests, and their tests came back with the same results. Now, why am I sharing that? Because it's clear. And I wrote a piece about 3 years ago for CEO World saying that by 2030, 50% of the CEOs in the big companies in the world will be women, because of what that science says, that collective intelligence. And so I'm bringing this out by saying that, wow, if that doesn't say to somebody, I need to change, I need to learn how to relate and communicate with people in ways that brings out the best in them and gives them, and truly listen to them. I mean, how many times have you gone in a meeting and, people are writing their answers or looking at their phone or whatever? What message does that say to people? It says, you're not important.
What you have to say isn't really all that important.
Yeah, that's right. Or, and even worse, you're not that important. I don't even respect you. All right.
Right.
So it's all this change that's going to happen because no one person is going to lead the smart AI movement.
No.
And if you look at the tools, and you're an expert on the tools. I'm not an expert, but I use some of the tools and, for specific purposes. I mean, the best thing I can do is have somebody else that I can basically say, here's what the tool is saying. Here's what I think is going on. What do you think is going on? And so it's
Yeah.
this way of being that we're going to have to change in our life, not just in the workplace. It's like, okay, we're all into this. And the biggest issue in our country is the fact that our society, especially in the business world, is a survival of the fittest, survival of a society,
Yeah.
so to speak. That doesn't fit
It doesn't.
when you've got the transformation that we have going on here. I mean, if you just think about it. Go back to last Christmas and try to just, and everybody that's listening, think about it. How did it all feel? What went up? And then how did it feel in, March when, Chat GPT 4 came out and when this thing really accelerated. All right. And it's only was in March that this happened. I mean, this is
Yeah.
November.
I know we haven't even been through a full calendar year yet.
It feels like, to me, the difference between March and November is like 2 or 3 years of life has gone past because so much new stuff is coming so fast. I mean,
Yes.
everything that people have learned, they've learned in a short period of time. And then they're also learning that I got to learn even more. And
right.
What they don't
It's
realize.
overwhelming.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And what they don't realize is I got to basically rewire myself and take ownership of my ego, my mind, my emotions, all right? How I listen, my behaviors. And I've got to actually do the work daily to do that, because that human transformation that needed, it goes back. The greatest examples, some great examples are NBA basketball teams. Almost all the NBA basketball teams have a meditation coach full time. All right. There is a reason you can get an NBA basketball player who basically can take 100 jump shots from mid-court. Strike that. 60 jump shots from mid-court and hit 100% of them, because he's done the work to come to the situation with the inner calm and inner peace that he can basically assess and just flow. All right.
Yep.
So you got basketball. Now let's go to the Navy SEALs. Navy SEAL is, probably the best commando outfit in the world. All right. The United States Navy built 2 huge research centers and to basically research how to train Navy SEALs so that the fear doesn't overwhelm them when they're in their actions. And so I've talked to Navy SEALs people and everything, commanders, whatever, and they say, we have trained our body that when we're in action, we are at complete peace with ourselves. We are silent and just automatically flowing where things are going. That's what.
Well, and that makes sense because you see this. I mean, anecdotally, I've seen this throughout my life that, again, people do not operate well in a fear state, in a state of anxiety, in a state of fear. When you are reacting, when you are reacting to the world around you, the environment around you, the stressors around you, you are not operating at your ideal capacity. And it's extremely detrimental to your long-term outcome.
Yes. And so really what you just said is so important. So what this means is that technology has taken a giant leap. I think everybody would agree with that. Okay.
Yeah.
A giant leap.
At least anybody listening and watching my show is keenly aware of the fact that technology has moved significantly in the past few years.
All right. What that means is we have to move. It's that simple. It's not optional. We have to move or we're going to be left behind. And we having to move. And as you look, all right, I mean, I predict there's going to be significant, basically, Organizations are going to be consolidated. All right. Big companies are going to be, industries are going to be consolidated.
Yes.
The companies that get this right, people wise and technology wise, it's not just the technology, but
No, it's the people around it.
And what's interesting is that when Microsoft got its new CEO some years ago, all right, not a long time, but some years ago, one of the first things he did was take all his direct reports out on a retreat to talk about compassion. And they all flipped. And he said, no. And he talked about meditation. And he said, this is why all this is important. And under his CEOship, see what happens. And and so it's like transformation. The good news is the way to transform oneself, the tools and practices are there. Some of them go
They're
by
accessible to anybody.
thousands of years. They're accessible to anybody, and they have been used productively by people. It's not rocket science. All it takes is discipline and coming up and not trying to do everything at once, and understand, wow, this is a journey, and this journey is going to go for a long time. And all right, so where do I start? Let's pick one or two things.
Well, before we go into this, because I want to talk a little bit about this, because I think and this is a good transition point, because I think we've set the stage for where we are in society right now, which is the world in general is in a the last few years especially have been exceptionally tumultuous,
yes,
which adds to that stress level. I mean, you and I were talking about it, that today, the amount of discipline and intentionality it requires to actually get to that calm state is significantly higher than it was 4 to 5 years ago. It takes more effort to say, I'm going to bring myself back to a state of calm. At the same time, we're in a hyper individualized society that is so focused on the individual versus the collective. And what you just shared is collective intelligence is the key and the path forward, which that validates everything I'm continuing to see. The group together will achieve far better than the individual by itself, which flies in the face of our culture as a whole here.
That's right.
We're just like, no, it's about me. It's the John Wayne, the Maverick. I go do my own thing, and I'm just going to cut my own path, and I'm going to figure it out by myself. And it's like, that's not the culture we're in. We're at a time where there's enough chaos to, fuel the sun, type of a thing.
Yeah.
And then stack on top of it, you now have this technological boom that is just exacerbating this, because all the things, like you said, your job is going to be disrupted.
Yeah.
Your company is going to be disrupted. It's not will it or will it not?
Right.
It's going to. It's a matter of when and how long, which could leave people in a state of absolute paranoia, which I've seen people do. They just want to turn it all off, go buy a tent in the Colorado Rockies, and just say, talk to me in 30 years, which I think there's a better path forward than that. And I'm sure you see this all the time as the dean, the Professor Emeritus of Business, because you've got all these people coming in going, I want to take on the world. And you've got to go, everything you thought you knew, I'm going to ask you to just put it in a pile, and we're going to throw it in the trash, because we're going to rewire you. And I think, to your point, that's what everyone has to do right now, which can feel overwhelming. So where do we start? Because to your point, I actually think it's a lot easier than people realize, and not easy in the sense that, in 30 seconds, one afternoon, you'll flip the switch. No, but through that intentional rewiring,
yes,
and putting in the time, you can. And so I'm curious, as you've been doing this for quite some time, where do people get started with this? Because even for me, sometimes I struggle with it, because I go, it's so natural. If somebody asks, well, what do I do to get started? Sometimes I'm like, I don't know where to get started because it's so familiar. So I'm curious for you, for people who are feeling like, I'm not there. I hear you. I recognize, okay, I could either react to all this in fear,
Yeah.
which is the worst thing you could do, even though everything's telling you that's what you should do.
Right.
Even your own body, your emotions, your reaction, like everything's saying this is how you should react. And now we're saying, don't do that.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Well, there's lots of choices, all right? But what has worked for many, many people is you start out small, all right? You start out
Okay.
small. And so you're thinking about yourself and what are the two things going on in myself that basically seem to have a lot of impact, okay? It's
Okay.
stuff coming out of my mind, all of a sudden, you're walking around and then something in your mind is saying, you realize that Jim doesn't like you. And, whoa, where did this come from? I mean, so
Yep.
you got stuff.
Because we're getting hit by a million messages that
Yeah.
are creating that.
That's right. So
Something happened. You're in your example, Jim did something or something popped into your head that you went,
yeah,
Jim doesn't like me anymore.
Jim doesn't like me anymore. And so then that sort of overtakes me. And so, that's one very common thing. And then the other common thing that tends to get into the emotional side. So then all of a sudden, emotionally, you start, getting either more fearful or more angry, or, I'll leave it at those two words for the moment. And so where do you start? And so it really comes down to the basic building blocks is ego, mind, and emotions. All right. What type of practices do I need to start doing? Because there are practices. And
Before you get to the practices, though, what you just shared right there, in and of itself, is a practice it's a practice in itself. And for me, as you were describing this, I think people know kind of where I sit worldview wise, but regardless of worldview, the wisdom is universal. And it reminds me of 2 Corinthians, where it says, take every thought captive, which is what you're talking about. Like, instead of reacting to it, an intentional step is going, when that hits you,
Yes.
Stop.
That's right.
Like, stop first. And
Yes.
that's almost just an intentional first step.
And deep breathing exercises is one way to stop it. And so when you feel yourself getting out of kilter, all right, let's slow down. Breathe in, counting. Depends on depends on which type of breathing you do. But all right, let's breathe into 7. Hold it. Breathe out. How does that feel? And you do that 4, 5, 6 times. And what you find is the anger, the fear, the volatility comes down. So breathing exercises, and you can do that anytime, anywhere with yourself. You just got to take deep breathing, and there's a lot of science behind it. So that's one thing you do. The second thing is mindfulness meditation. It is probably the building block. It comes underneath even the breathing, but the breathing is part of it. Mindfulness meditation. And you start out, trying to do 3 to 4 minutes. And mindfulness meditation, I'm sure everybody knows what it is. I mean, you're basically trying to have a very peaceful mind, and and your mind will be saying things to you as you're for some time. It takes a lot of work and a long time of work to
a lot of discipline to shut out those shut that stuff out.
And I've been doing mindfulness meditation a long time, all right? And I can tell you today, am I completely void of the bad stuff? No.
No, it's still there.
It comes up every day.
You're still getting bombarded by it on the
But the
same.
difference
Yeah,
is how you react to it. All right. And
yeah.
the mindfulness training, by taking, deep breathing, and when you hear something or feel something, you don't latch on to it. All right. You don't latch on to it. You focus on your breath. It's a lot like deep breathing. And you focus and you bring yourself back. When I first started out doing it, to be honest, I wasn't that good at it and everything.
Well, it's I was just going to say, it's funny you say this, because if you're listening or watching this, I get the initial reaction of that just seems silly, and I get it.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize it's a skill too. You try and do this. If you have not done this before,
you can't do it.
And somebody says something, or you think that something, or you get hit with something that makes your anxiety levels shoot through the roof. You may look at this and go, that's just silly. You try it. I would challenge anybody. Just try it if you're not familiar with this. Yeah. You'll realize it's a lot more work than you realize.
But the key is our ultimate goal is inner peace. All right. And
right.
That's the ultimate goal in the smart AI age. And let me just read: a state of inner stillness and calmness that enables you to go out in the world with your most non-judgmental, fearless, quiet ego, quiet mind that enables you to learn, unlearn, and relearn at the pace of change. Inner stillness. And what's so fascinating is how all this comes together. Out of that inner stillness, the science shows unequivocally the best thinking, the best ideas emerge from inner stillness. Santa Fe Institute research. All right. So what we're trying to do is calm the body using meditation practices, using deep breathing practices. And then there's another little practice that's very, very important to basically reduce the size of one's ego. And part of that is redefining what ego means. But another part of it is gratitude practices. All right. Who helped you today, or who did something nice, or who in your life helped you? How do you give gratitude to the ones that helped you become and be better, whatever? And because gratitude practices engender positive emotions. Our goal is
and it gets you out of your navel gazing mode.
Yeah.
Instead of looking down at yourself, you're looking out at someone else.
Yeah. Thanking somebody. And I mean, and the people that are really very good at meditating and everything, many of the ones I've talked with, all right, have a sidebar gratitude practice. And really, we go back to the collective intelligence. If we go back to the work world, how do we optimize human performance in the work world? Basically, by learning these practices. And the science of deliberate daily practices says you can learn all these practices and they'll be very successful, but you have to do them every day. Deliberate daily practices. And
like any skill. I mean, honestly, like any skill, you have to put it into practice or it will not grow.
And, I had, and this is not bragging, but it's not bragging at all, because I didn't have anything to do with it. All right. It's like, I was working with a company, a mid-sized company that was having some troubles. And the senior leadership team of 5 said, let's get into this meditation stuff. And so we worked for a year, and then they brought it into a bigger group. Meditation stuff we're talking about. From the time they started to 2 years after that time, okay, their productivity went off the charts, and they were 5x more successful as a company than they were before. And every
does not surprise me.
And
it does not surprise me one bit.
It's because of the work we did. And so every day, every meeting, they start off with a 3 to 5 minute meditation practice. And where's your head? how do you come to the table? And then to close each meeting. And they still do this through to today. And so it's like, if you have the discipline to do it, it's life.
Transformational.
It's
Well, and going back to because I want to break it into two pieces. Because when we talk about this, taking the thought captive, first of all, that's a choice that you make and saying, am I going to let this control me, or am I going to take it captive and go before I even react to it? But I think about, again, and whatever it is you're doing to calm yourself down in that state, I tend to have a lot. This is why I love AI image generation, because the crazy things that pop through my head, I can actually turn them into visuals for this. But when I think about it, in many regards, you're going slow to go fast, because I've heard people when it comes to this, well, we don't have time for that. We got to hurry. And I think about it on like trying to set a scope on a boat in crazy waves. You're sitting here trying to aim while the boat's turning and the waves are throwing you around. If you took the time to say, let's calm the waves,
yes,
we can aim so much better than sitting trying to flip things around. And so it's one of those, we're trying to go slow to go fast, but you have to fight against that feeling of like, I don't have time for that, and go, this is actually going to give you back more time, because you're going to see clearly, and you're not going to be distracted with the trying to keep your balance and try and keep things from falling off the edge. You're going to be able to go, okay, we've calmed down first. Now we can do it. And based on what you've said, and my experience mirrors this, we're not talking months and weeks of time.
no,
We're talking minutes, sometimes even seconds, being able to go.
yes, correct. And what's so fantastic and amazing is that the quality of the conversations in the workplace, the quality of conversations at home, the quality of conversation with friends, so to speak.
Yes.
It goes to a different level, and the return on this in ROI, the return on investment
of
this
exponential.
off the charts.
It's you can't measure it.
You can't.
My experience has been you cannot measure it. I mean, and even for your own well-being. So just, again, without going too deep into it, but on a personal level, the number of times where, and again, we'll use your example of gym, right? Some hypothetical gym, something happens or is said that you think, the number of times where I've been in that situation and I thought I heard, or I thought I understood something, but by settling the waves and going, hang on, that even put me sometimes in a place to, again, think outside of myself and ask a follow-up question of, did you mean that?
Yes.
Is this what you were intending? Yes. And to have that person go, oh my word, no, like, no. To be able to diffuse what, again, going back to the analogy of like, you might end up spending all this time trying to fix something that really wasn't even there in the first place.
Right. You're so correct. And that's why in the work that I do, I tell people, I said, and you're working with smart people, and everybody's got an ego and everybody wants to look good and all this kind of stuff. And every leader I've ever worked with, I've said, look, we're going to have a great time together, but you're going to have to do a few things that are not optional. And you got to try some of these things, but you got to learn how in every meeting, all right, you want your mind to be completely clear and blank, and you're listening to somebody. And the second thing is, when they stop talking, you do not basically go on the offensive and either tell them why they're wrong, or why you don't like this, or why you're right. The first thing you do with somebody is what you just said you do. All right. Okay. This is what I think you meant, or this is what I heard. Is that what you meant? You ask a question. You ask a question before you start pulling out the firepower. All right. And what does that question do? That question says something to the other person. That question says, oh, he or she's really listening and trying to understand what I mean. That feels good. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I mean, and that's how people feel good sharing and coming together and having these conversations that are not multi, that are not basically like, going out with six guns and all right,
Yeah.
as soon as you're through, I'm going to shoot a bullet at you and I'm going to shoot a bullet at him and I'm going to get a bullet at me, not real bullets, but you know what I'm saying.
Yep. No, I know exactly what you mean.
It's
And again, that helps avoid the anxiety, the fear that it, we don't even realize sometimes we actually create the waves that are rocking the raft.
That's right. And we're creating the waves that are not only rocking the raft, but we're making it very hard and harder for us to calm those waves
Yeah.
because so many people teed off at us that think we're arrogant and it's only about me, et cetera, that we got to basically, it takes double or triple the time to buy back to get people to believe you.
Yeah. Because you've broken the trust of, well, you're saying that's not what it is, yet all of your actions communicate a very different message than that.
And so if you
And now
think,
you've got to build the trust back.
and you think about the world now with the AI and everything, think about how fast things can happen. I mean, you can go online and do your prompts with AI and everything, and you get information that, sometimes is very good. But the key thing there is you got to basically think about that information and really then ask questions. And you are expert at this. Ask more prompts, more questions to try to make sure that that is a good answer. All right, different
Yes.
types of questions. That's a skill, and so it's that whole thing. If you think about it, when we're using chat and waiting for it to answer, and you don't have to wait too long, waiting for it to answer, all right, it's a little bit like that's the most silent you are, all right,
Yeah.
in creating the question and then reacting the answer. And what you want is that silence, like you're talking about it, that silence that if you can, the more silence inside of yourself, the higher the likelihood you'll be successful, you have a happy life, you have good friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's calming. It's almost like, okay, smart AI, new world, new game, new me,
Yeah. Well,
new.
and the thing about it is, two things that come to mind as you've said this. First of all, one, going back to the, it will be, it will affect things in a positive way all around. And again, in interpersonal ways, because going back to even relationships, nobody likes to be near that rocking raft when their raft is already rocking as well. And so if you are that sense of peace around them, that again is a positive force for the people around you. So you can have a positive effect on the other people around you. But I just think about this, from an AI standpoint, doing this, and I think this is some of the things that I have had to clarify in the past with folks, is it's not denying the frightening nature of some of these things. It's not denying that it's scary or that you're overwhelmed or that you're uncertain about the future. It doesn't mean you have to pretend that doesn't exist.
Right.
It's about bringing yourself to a place of calm so that you can respond well to that uncertainty rather than reacting.
And it's why I use the words take ownership of you. We're talking about learn how to bring your best self to whatever every day, to the table, to the meeting, just to yourself, to your family. It's the journey to best self. And it's and that journey, all right, that journey is as transformative as AI will be.
Yes.
And that journey's totally in an individual's realm. Control.
I think that's one of the things that's so encouraging about what we just talked about here is at a time where it feels like everything is out of control.
Yes.
And everything is outside of your control, which is only exacerbating the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty that you're dealing with. This is something that every single person who watches, listens, whatever, can go, you have control over this.
Yes.
Like at a time when you feel like everything is out of control, here is something that
Yes.
you can do, that you have control over, that will actually help you through this difficult season.
Yeah. And what I've learned over the years with these practices, it really helps if you have an accountability partner. And that can be someone from home, can be somebody at work, could be a friend that holds you accountable. The number one leadership coach in the world for the last 10 years. He's, you know, he's not a young person. He's been in the game a long time. He's a great human being. He has a partner, all right, an accountability partner that he hired years ago. Every night he gets a call from his partner, and the partner goes down the list of what he's working on and saying, did you do this? How did this go? Did you do this? Why didn't you do this? And so it's the science of daily deliberate practice, but for most people it helps having one or two accountability partners who will basically say, okay, you're working on this. You're working on the quiet ego or the quiet mind, or you're working to manage your emotions. How do you overcome negative emotions, and how do you generate positive emotions? Okay. All right. So what did you do today? Were you positive in every meeting? No, no, not really. Well, how many meetings? So, well, maybe two. Okay. All right. What do you need to do tomorrow? I think I need to get to 3. Yeah, you're right. You need to get to 3. So to go tomorrow is 3 times I'm going to be nice instead of 2, right? And so it's just what's
funny about what you just said with this is going back to not only I did a YouTube video, it was maybe a few weeks ago, where I said one of the biggest keys to career success is being known. And this very much hits on this. Now, does it mean you need to be known to everyone? No, not the same way. But what you're hitting on right here is this piece of it fights against everything inside of you of I don't want people to know who I really am, because they will see the ugliness that sometimes is there. Like there's some great in all of us and there's some ugliness in all of us. And that can be very frightening. But to your point, if you have that person in your life who knows that about you and says, yes, and we're moving you in the right trajectory, not only is that helpful for you and very fulfilling, but on top of it, going back to getting you out of navel gazing mode of just thinking about yourself, ironically, that partnership actually forces you to think about someone else and how they're thinking about you.
Yeah. And what's so important, going to be so important in the business world going forward, taking into account what's going to happen and what is happening, is it's going to be mission critical in the workplace for leaders at all levels. If you have anybody reporting to you, you're going to have open conversations, and the leaders are going to have to apologize when apology is needed or due. All right.
Yeah.
Or leaders going to say, this was my mistake. I take ownership of this, but help me figure out what we do. We're going to have to basically, instead of being Superman or Superwoman, all right, we're going to have to basically be comfortable that the way to our best self requires the help of others. Okay. The science is large on that. All right.
Yep.
And I also want my team to be great. Why? Because I want to get my bonus and my, and my stock and all this. But no more, it should be more than that. I want them to be successful. And if I can cross this ground from what is it for me, that part of my job as a leader, as a manager, is to enable others to become their best self, then we can knock the cover off the ball. Okay. If I
Oh,
if
yeah.
I got a team that basically, you know, is trust each other,
Cares more about the collective of the team than the individual.
then it's like magical. All right. And it's like and so all of this is in the business world. It's You can't do it without transforming yourself. But the fact of the
Yeah.
matter is that if you're on that journey, you'll learn real quick that I can transform my group or my team or help other people. Wait a minute, what's going on here? We are really knocking the cover off the ball, or really
Yeah.
we're hearing things that we weren't saying before that we didn't know about. We got to get those fixed. We'll get those fixed. It's a
Right. We're seeing pathways through uncharted waters that we didn't see before.
yeah, and it's there's going to be AI age is going to require a new way of being and a new way of working. And they're
Yes.
going to be integrated because the new way of being is going to make possible that new way of working. And that new way of working will be at a amazingly high level. And there'll be more happiness, more joy. We do have issues about how do we help people who, you know, that are laid off, and we got the whole issues about
Yeah.
people left behind. That's a societal issue, but it's also going to become a capitalist issue
Yep.
as to what we do. But the answer to that is everybody has some. Everybody can add value somewhere. All right,
Yes.
and it's and so if you think about it, there's a and look at where we stand and where the world stands. You think about the countries that are, let's say, the farthest along on being able to reach what we're talking about here. They're generally, primarily some small countries in Europe. But if you look and study them and visit with the people, you see how it works.
Yeah.
And so it's not it's it's gonna take a lot of work. But the
It
fact of the
is.
matter is, there's little downside, huge upside, and to be honest, we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice. I think that's the thing with it is it's not an option any period. I don't know that it really ever was. I think this was always one of those things. It's like this just is the better pathway. But I think there were environments where you could ignore it and maybe get away with it. I think now we're getting to a point where it's like you can't. But I think what's encouraging about this, and I find this true in so many things around technology, is usually the best path forward with technology usually has nothing to do with technology, which
Yeah,
should be encouraging to people because I run into people all the time who go, well, I'm not tech savvy. I'm not t- familiar with all of this. And it's like, that's actually okay because the best path forward to charting and navigating it actually has nothing to do with technology at all. And the three things we discussed today, four, like capturing those thoughts, being intentional on bringing yourself to peace, being grateful, focusing and intentional on gratitude, and then having someone or someone's in your life to help hold you accountable to that stuff. Those have nothing to do with AI, coding, understanding tech ecosystems, system architect. Like you don't need any of that to be able to do that. And it may sound counterintuitive to say, you're telling me that's the path forward
yes,
through this
yes,
technological age? It's like, yes, it is.
yes. It is. It is the path. It is the path. And the people who, the people that get on the path and do the work, will will you know, they'll reach back someday and say, thank goodness I did this.
Yeah.
Because not only is it thank goodness for them, but it changes how they are with others. And there will
Yes.
be others who say, I'd like to drink some of that. All right.
Yeah. The
Uh,
ripple effect just keeps going.
yes. And that's how you get to the point of whatever you want: joy, happiness, meaningful work, meaningful life, kindness, caring, compassionate. Okay. But what's fascinating is that it takes courage to become compassionate, to become what we're talking about. And that courage is going into that unknown and
Yeah.
realizing that there's so much science and so much of what we're talking about, as I said before, goes back to the seven great religions and their values, goes back to the ancient days of the Eastern and Western philosophies, some of which are still in place. I mean, meditation is thousands of years old, all right? Uh, and the
It's
fact,
not a new thing.
yeah, it's not a new thing. And the fact of the matter is, it hasn't, there hasn't been advancements. Okay, there people people meditating today are using the same meditation format and
Yeah.
words that were used, in
Thousands of years ago.
thousands of years. And
But the thing with it is, though, to your point, you have to fight against the current. And I
yes,
think that is one of the hardest things
yes,
because, like we said, culture is hyper individualistic. We've got activity galore to distract us, to just add to the I'm too busy, I have too much going on.
yes,
Like there's so much going on. It's like you have to fight against that current.
that's
And
right.
that is work, but it's worthwhile work.
It's it takes courage, it takes commitment, it takes accountability partners, because when accountability partners are like coaches, cheer you on. All right, and um, and and it doesn't take long before people are coming up to you saying, you know, you really did a great job here. Or, you really were so considerate of so and so. Or, you know, because of what you were doing right there, the team came together. Or, what you did helping that person fix that thing, you know, really made me think about, I'm not helping anybody. I'm out for myself. I mean, it has this sort of, you just you can't imagine how it actually
No,
starts translating through your life and your
you
world.
can't until you've seen it. And then once you've seen it, you can't look back. And I think that's one of the things is once you've gone down the path, it's impossible to come back from it. But again, you have to switch that mindset of if I give up, there won't be enough left for me. And it's like, it's not true. There's an abundance. The more you give, the more there is. It doesn't make sense. I get it. Doesn't like I'm a math guy. It doesn't make mathematical sense. It's just the way it works, though.
It is the way it works, and you know, the more people that we can invite to be on this journey and to show them that there are ways that are transformative, and that ways that we go back to this inner peace. We go back to the fact that how you can be happy. And happiness, yes, you need certain amount of money to live on and everything. um,
Sure.
you got to have food on the table, but happiness happiness is happiness is not only internally, but there's very few really happy people that are not good people with other people. All right. In other
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
happiness it's circular. All right.
Yep.
How I'm treating you, and then how that person responds to me, and we basically get to be happy together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because
I
anybody can sit around and say, I'm going to go, you know, steal $5 million, and I'm going to be real happy, and I'm going to be, da da da. I mean, they can create your own story. All right. We're
yeah.
not talking about that. We're talking about really how do we optimize our way of being for a new way of existing in society, which is
Yep.
created by technology.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we're just kicking off, and Ed, I could probably spend the rest of the afternoon chatting about this, but I think we hit on some really important things. And I hope this is an encouragement and kind of a call to action, literally for everybody, because again, you don't need to be hyper tech savvy. And regardless of what your situation is, everything we described, you
Yes,
can do. There's not a world you're in where you go, but I can't do that.
that's right.
You can. It's a matter of choice.
Right.
And will you make the choice?
Yes.
And on the other side, I can tell you it's worth the choice, but you have to get over the fear of I don't know.
Yeah. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And
So
I invite I invite people to take the choice. To take the
yeah,
choice.
take
To
the
make
red pill.
take, and the fact is that and it would be you have so many people that listen with you and everything. It'd be and this just is coming off the top of my head, and it's just probably that means it's completely crazy. But I mean, it's almost like it almost means you could say to people, and you probably get numbers and everything. How many people listen to whatever, and say, okay, all right, there's you know thousands of you that have heard this and this and this. Okay, take a month and work on this
Do
stuff
it.
and figure out how to do it and do it, and then a month from now, let's then see how many people did it.
Yep.
And then okay, that's good. All right, there's some of you out there that still got the choice. Are you sure? Because these other people are saying, and in fact, even if you get people even if you had a different type of show where 5 or 6 people did it and they offered you, we'll talk about how we did it to people, and you bring those 5 people on the show, and then the other thousands of
Yep.
people will say, wait a minute,
If they did it, why
they
can't I do it?
why can't I do it?
Yeah. Well,
You
there you go. There's
you,
the
you
there's
can
the
be an
Tech Talks
accelerator,
challenge.
man. You
There we go. We'll build the accelerator. So and literally everything we said can be done. So for anybody who listens and watches, take the challenge, do it for 30 days. There you
yes,
go. Do it for 30 days. You don't even have to do it for 30 days. You do it for a week. You won't go back. But
yeah, but
give it 30
definitely
days.
30.
Stick
30
the
is the goal.
course.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Good.
Well, Ed, thank you
Thank
so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Hopefully, everyone watching and listening gets something out of this. There are 4 easy actions you can take. They'll take work, they'll take courage, they'll take discipline, but they're easy to do and they will pay in dividends. So, Ed, I appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you. Thank you so much.